Hi, good morning. Happy Friday.
Yeah, happy
It's
Friday.
such a balsamic moon. Don't you feel that like,
American.
oh, I just want to exhale. I just want to exhale, but I can't exhale. I feel like
Yeah,
a little bit balsamic.
yeah, I want to burn stuff. I'm hoping to burn stuff today.
So so we should introduce ourselves, maybe. Who are
Yeah,
you?
I'm Lillian Bennett, and I am an evolutionary astrologer with some training in Hellenistic. I like to work with folks on finding solutions that last, and my website is effectiveastrology.com.
Wow, that was an incredibly well done intro that I feel not prepared enough to follow. So
Do you want
I'm
me
Tracy Quinlan, Consult the
to?
Sky Astrology. I'm a contemporary astrologer. I blend modern psychological astrology, but I honor traditional rulership. I write for the Llewellyn astrological calendar, and I help clients feel better about what they're going through and who they are, and give them tips on who to move forward. Did I
Yeah,
miss
I like that
anything?
you do a lot. That's really impressive. You know, that's
Well,
my
thank
favorite.
you so much. So, what are we talking about today?
Well, in the spirit of helping clients and ourselves, we're talking about a type of remediation that you introduced to me. I hadn't heard about it, and that I was hoping you'd share an overview before we dive into signs or planets or examples. But it's planetary charities.
It
And
is
there's so,
planetary charity.
one more second, they're so significant. There will be a place on our website at skynotespodcast.com where you can go and check out these charities and also add the ones that you find really resonant with different planets after we're done.
Yeah, and coming up with the charities is such a creative process. And once we've talked about it, I'm sure other people will have incredible ideas of connecting planets to charities that you and I never even considered. So I'm actually really looking forward to that. The ongoing, because this isn't just a discussion. As you said, it's on our website. So this isn't just about today. This is kind of a big thing that'll move forward and that we'll stick with into
Yeah,
the future. Yeah. So do you want me to talk a little bit about remediation and then how this fits in?
I think that's a great idea.
So the idea of remediation, I mean, the word in general is just to fix something, to make something better, um, to improve something that maybe feel broken. I don't know how else to describe it, but in astrology, difficult things in our charts or difficult transits that we're going through or anything like that, we can talk to the planets through the things that they're affiliated with and use those things to help maybe align ourselves better to the planet, maybe just create a better relationship with the planet. Who knows what the actual mechanism is, but that's the point of it. And with planetary charities, I'll tell you how I got introduced to it. Jane Sloan, I finally remembered after the last time we talked, who is an astrologer in Victoria, BC, Canada, came and spoke to our local group about remediation in general. And she went through each planet and what their affiliations were, and then talked about different types of remediation within that. And planetary charities, she said, for her, brought the most obvious benefit the quickest. And so, and she just found that in her practice, it was one of the most potent things she had seen in her own practice and in her clients' practice. And what it is to align yourself with a charity or pick a charity that is the themes of that charity are associated with the themes of a planet, and to give something of yourself to the charity. And it can be anything. It can be time, it can be articles of things, it can be money, whatever. Two things to consider: it should hurt a little, it should feel like you're giving something, right, for it
Mm-hmm.
to really resonate as a remediation.
Mm-hmm.
And it should be something that they need, right? So if you want to donate food but that's not what the charity does, well, that's not helpful. So the whole process needs to be aligned with what you need, what the charity needs, and what the planet is asking for. Make sense?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I'm thinking of an example that I'd like to toss out. and see what you think about it. There was a period of time I couldn't afford to take piano lessons. It was not on my list of priorities to that extent. And my piano teacher and I had worked out this situation where we could go clean her garage and still have fun, or go through all of the things that she couldn't go through that had been laying around for 20 some years, and still enjoy each other. And it's funny that you say it should hurt a little. I'm such a fussy person that everything's kind of a pain in the ass. But this was not just to go hang out with her. And I'm burying this part because I'm trying to get to the point. She taught me still, because I would come over to her house whenever she asked and clean things out. But my commitment that she wanted me to sign up for was they would go to the next place where they would make the most sense. And so I had to kind of strategize, like, who needs music books, and who needs a woodcut tool that they don't need anymore, and so on and so forth. And so it was really quite a challenge. So what do you think about that? Would that fall into that, or is that too much fun? Because we
No,
really
I
did.
absolutely, what's interesting about that is, I cheat because I know your chart a little bit.
Right.
So, to me,
Maybe
the
we
fact
could.
that music is involved, there's some Venus connected to that, there's some Neptune connected to that,
Yeah.
that you gave up some of your time, you were making Saturn happy.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that it engaged that detail oriented strategy, that's your Mars and Virgo. So, I mean, that whole exercise ticked an awful lot of boxes. Um,
Wow.
and could be like a very complex way of acknowledging and using planetary charity for sure. But anything you're doing needs an intention behind it. So
Right.
if you'd have known this ahead of
Yeah.
time, you
Yeah.
you would have picked who am I working with, and who am I sacrificing for? Which planet? When I
Right.
say who, I'm meaning planet, right?
That's so funny because it, in a weird way, and I think it's because I'm a Sagittarius sun, I think that means I can use this fussiness that has largely been a pain in the ass for me and put it in its proper channel and see what happens. But
I
back
like it.
to
I
these
like
chairs.
it.
When we talked about it last, you pointed me to Carolyn Casey and her book, Making the Gods Work for You, or the audio book, because it's hard to find that book. And so listening to her and her sort of visionary language is so satisfying. And the fact that she put it in so many form factors, music and community, and I'm sure it was a pain in the ass to get there, that kind of thing, and intention. Some of the things I remember her saying is, everyone is kind of working to get you a better outcome. All of the planets, she mythologized them and kind of gave them their personalities for the purposes of this example. And so the only trick is you have to ask. And I know in Sufism, there's kind of a joke that, how much do you have to take before you're going to turn to God and go, God, help, and so Caroline Casey said, the phone lines are waiting. All you have to do is ask. And I love that intention, I think, is how you ask. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I believe so. Yeah, I absolutely believe so. And I need to go and dig it up because I read an incredible book called Real Magic,
Mm-hmm.
and it's written by a scientist who got drawn into wanting to study the magical side of life.
Yeah.
He would rather study the placebo effect than the meds, right? Because really, I mean, to me, when I think about that, I'm like, I don't understand how they're not so more fascinated with the placebo effect. That has more in it than the actual medicine, you know. And so they actually did quite an extended study on intention. And so they split it up. They had people who believed in the magical stuff. They had people who didn't believe. So they're split into two groups that way. And then they needed to, within those groups, one set an intention and one didn't. Right.
Ah.
And so it was, I don't remember what the thing was that they were doing, but the outcome of that was the order of success was people who believed and set an intention.
Mm-hmm.
the next success was people who didn't believe and set an intention. So it was the intention part of that equation that was the really big deal. And apparently, like, it was so clear, it was irrefutable outcomes. There were not a lot of extraneous circumstances, and it got accepted into one of the biggest magazines. But then the scientists came and said, we don't want to talk about that, get rid of it. And it got banned. It got banned in all the scientific magazines. And so that's what turned me around when it came to intentions, because then all of a sudden I'm like, well, we need to be setting intentions for everything we do, right? That's the whole idea of living
Yeah.
consciously.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to add the intention piece in there, because anything that you're going to do with remediation, I think it's, you know, if you're somebody like I was for a really long time who didn't understand how the things in their life happened uh, so far off from the plan, you know,
Right.
right? It's like, oh, you need to say it out loud. You have to be brave enough to say, this is where I'm going and this is what I want it to look like. And
Right.
that's kind of a brave thing. And that in itself is empowering in a form of remediation, right?
We have a note from Sai Samita Mohapatra, and I apologize if I've said that incorrectly, who's saying that they can't hear. I'm wondering, can you hear either one of us? And I see your birth data. I appreciate that. I'm going to grab that for you. I'm going to copy that. But at the moment, we're talking about charity, and we're not doing predictive astrology, which is, will I get a government lecture? But we'll pray for you to get it. So thank you for chiming in there. So yeah, do you want to, no voice from, it
Me
sounds
again?
like me. Yeah, or no, you. Can you check the, or do we need to get off air and then come back?
No, let me just go and check in here and see if I
Great.
change a setting, if that helps.
That sounds great. Thank you so much. Um, so we'll send prayers out for you to get the government lecturer job in July. That's a lovely goal for you. I think that is. Well, I'm going to talk for a little bit.
Do
And
it,
one of the
yeah.
things I wanted to kind of point out is that, of course, you know, and we're not saying this, but it's important not to skip over it. Charity is something that most religions offer up as a significant item for folks to work on. The blessing that we give is a grounding of, I apologize, here we give blessings before meals. And I still do it, you know, and it's one, I'm grateful to get to eat at all. And then two is I want to give back to the folks who prepared the food and offered it. And so one of the things that I've looked for as I've gone along is what are the charities that work? Like, you know, there's a really, I think it's a really valuable thing to send kids to be counselors, you know, and to work with different groups that they may not have access to so that they can learn this community that they're part of in the world, and make sure that they're not kind of skipping over anybody or alienating themselves, kind of thing. And I've seen that yield really good results because you learn how to work in a system and you learn how to give, etc. And I think the last time you called it something like tithing, which I think
Oh,
makes,
in religion, yeah, there's tithing in religion. Let me
yeah,
know if you can hear me now. I've changed the audio.
yeah. Can you hear both of us now?
There's a
And
bit of a delay, so we have to wait.
yeah, thanks.
I don't know. Anyways, keep so tithing in religion. Yeah, a lot of religions have the tithing
Yeah,
donation. Yeah,
and
yeah.
there's something about that gratitude. You know, um, I feel like we're more accustomed to giving, especially in the States. You know, there are a lot of tax benefits to giving. And so it's actually a strategy to save money by giving to charities. And that, I think that shifts it because it shifts the intention, right? Look at your face. Look at your beautiful face.
Well, yeah, that's not the same. I
But
mean,
I,
so it depends, right? Because you
right.
could have somebody who's tithing who like that 10% or whatever they've committed through their church, if it
Yes.
hurts, like if it's really like a sacrifice to give,
Yeah.
then that's different. That is definitely the intention. That is definitely the, giving something to appease God or however, wherever they're coming from when they do it, right?
Right.
But somebody who's already wealthy, who's just looking for a tax break and just
Right.
donating what they're told they're supposed to get a certain amount of money back,
Yeah.
that there's nothing in that. That's not planetary charity in that. There's
Right.
nothing there. Very small amount, maybe a little bit. I don't want to say nothing, but you know
Right.
what I mean? Like
Right.
there, if somebody really hates giving their money away and there's a lot of pain in doing it, then maybe, there's a little bit. The more pain that causes, probably the better it is.
And that's not to say there's no connection otherwise, right? Like apart from that one tax benefit, any person can give from anywhere, and no one's questioning that do they have or not have the right intention. That's something, you know.
No, but it's just it's not. I'm not saying that out of judgment at all. I mean, a
Exactly.
little bit. Let me be clear. Use Sag on the midheaven, but it's more about if you're looking for benefit, there
Yeah.
is a certain amount of uh, some integrity. I don't know a good word that's not insulting because I'm trying really
Yeah.
hard to
Yeah.
be
Well, I have
neutral.
another example that could maybe like I pray a lot, I've hung out with Sufis a lot. I consider my heart a Sufi heart, and that's an Islamic mystic um, group who focuses on um, oh gosh, hospitality, respect, and dignity, which are three things that I've grown to love and cherish and try to provide, although I'm terrible at it. I'll just put it that way. Um, and so the Sufi prayers, they come easy to me. And I'm driving down this street in Seattle that has like a real, um, you kind of feel like you're being yanked off stage stoplight. And I find myself praying, oh, let me go through that red light. Let there be no cops there. And I was like, excuse me, ma'am. That's garbage. Like that's not okay. Like think about that, and um would that I could keep those kind of really intense opinions to myself. But the gist is I stopped praying like that. I stopped. I thought, it's easier to feel like, but I want to be the center. I want to be the main character. But anything that helps me learn how to let go of that is helpful developmentally. So
Right, right.
yeah.
Hmm.
So we're
Well,
not
and
getting feedback. So I say we just roll with it and we'll
yeah,
keep our
we're
recording and
recording it. It's going to go up whether you can hear us or not. We can hear it, so we know it's being recorded with sound. So
yeah, apologies.
yeah, we're so sorry. We'll figure it out eventually.
Yeah.
Um, well, and so it's interesting, like I do have people in my social circles who are very poo-poo to any energies,
Right.
crystals,
Of course.
and my answer is always if the intention is there, it will do something,
Yeah.
right? Whether it's the stone, whether it's the intention, whether it's the color, it doesn't actually really matter all that much, right? So when we say a planet is affiliated with certain colors, well, you can with the right intention or with the actual like a clear, not right, a clear intention, you can take any object and give it an association with a planet if it fits
Right.
with what you're trying to do. it's
Right.
it's all in your intention, all of it,
Right. So
right?
I was raised Catholic. Here's another example. I was raised Catholic, and tragically, before I was born, three of my two brothers and one sister passed away in a fire. So part of the Catholic ritual is you can light candles for folks who have passed. And so I thought that was really, ooh, as a kid, like, oh my goodness, I want to do that. And then you get there and you have to leave a donation. And so as a kid, I'm like, what do I do? And so my mom, I have to go ask, and then my mom gives me some money, and then I go do it, and we're all done. But that's another example of like, it's targeted. It's not for general good health. I know that again, to the Sufi practice, the group that I used to do stuff with did free food Mondays, where they would free dinner Mondays, where they would invite folks from Ballard to come have a vegetarian gluten-free meal because it was the Pacific Northwest, y'all, and we just did that kind of stuff, and enough to fill your belly. But unless you call the chaos of working with a bunch of folks to get that meal prepared, I don't know that there was a sacrifice. Again, it was kind of a party, right? So it's
Yeah.
interesting,
Yeah. Well, and what's actually really fascinating is that I remember like when I had my hair salon years and years ago, somebody came into it who knew a little bit about feng shui, and they were saying that it was terrible energetically. You love
Oh,
hearing that, right?
yeah.
After you signed a big lease. So she connected me to somebody who knew something about feng shui and energy, and she came in. And one of the things that kept getting repeated is it should be intentional and take a bit of effort, but it shouldn't throw your whole life off.
Yeah.
It shouldn't create stress or negative energy, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's the same with this. Like it should feel like you've done something that's, that shifted, right? I had a good example. So say you're going to donate clothes,
Yeah.
and right, and you've got this piece that you love and you've been waiting to lose 20 pounds to wear it. It's
Sure.
been there for so long that it's not even really in style anymore, but there's still that attachment to the all everything around that. There's so much psychology that's attached to that thing. So giving it up for somebody else is going to have meaning. It's going to hurt a little for a ton of different reasons,
Yeah.
but there's so much magic in that because it's, letting go of something, a part of yourself you no longer need. Like there's just so much. You could sit down and write a chapter in a book about all of the meaning in a move like that, right? So that's what I mean by effort.
I
Something
like,
that's like consciously, yeah. Okay. I hope that clarified some things for people.
I think it does. Yeah.
Excellent. Cool.
Yeah.
So, what do we want to talk about in terms of this next? Do we want to talk about what the planets want,
Well,
or is there something
let's
first?
there's something I'll see if I can put it into words. So we talked about the origins. We talked about charity. We talked about cultural charity stuff. We talked about vibes, which I love, puts it into that somatic framework that's helpful. You don't want to feel like crap. You want to feel good after it.
Right. So can I want to add a little piece.
Yeah.
I don't know, something just sort of came into my head about, especially like, because you can do a lot of work, and I know like Andrea Gers does a ton of work around remediation and the planets, and a lot of her stuff has been more aligned with health and helping people with health crises and health issues. And so I think sometimes we can get really caught up in having a really specific outcome to the intention that we set. And I think that's the other challenge that people will run into and then think things don't work because maybe you're asking for something that's not really what you're meant for. And so like let's use a health remediation just as an example, because the one thing that I noticed in doing the acutonics with the sound forks and the sound healing that are, and I use it very associated with astrology, is that when you start bringing in the planets and try to do some like vibrational healing in that way, sometimes it's not you get a treatment and you get up and you walk out and you're magically healed.
Right.
Sometimes it's that within the next short period of time, you're introduced to the doctor who actually understands what's going on with you and can help you. So, one of the keys is now stay curious and pay attention, because setting up a hard fixed outcome, you're going to miss all the other things that you're drawing to yourself.
Yeah. And, it's interesting because that does touch back into that point about what I was trying to say with the praying to do something criminal and not get caught, right? Like that's how hard it is to have expectations, right? I don't know a better example than what you provided. The promise of it is to make an improvement and to open the door. The promise is not and you will get this, and I struggle with that a lot. I don't know if you do with astrology. I've gotten clients who have shown up with like a full fifth house in transit. And I'm like, whoa, sometimes I say, if you don't want a kid, now's the time to button that up. And then they end up, of course, having a kid. And then they want to know, like, the next time, what do I get to have? What do you do? What do you do? And the truth is, for my intention, is I want people to feel like they can see themselves, they can be seen. And if they want, they can reduce the impact of negative things, and the negative impact of negative things. But yeah, I think it's a really good call out that, like, expectation is a hard nugget. It's a hard thing for people. And this is not about providing satisfaction for your expectations.
Well, and it's interesting because, in having my own business and trying to, figure out how to market it and do all the, solopreneur type stuff, everything you learn around marketing and putting yourself out there is all about, like, what are people's problem and how do you solve it?
Right.
So we're getting really programmed that that's the way stuff is supposed to work. And it's like, but like one of the things that I tracked because it's part of my chart, I'm passionate about it, are people who have quincunxes, the 150-degree aspect
Oh
between
yeah.
important planets.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, if if you have a quincunx between who's in charge, let's say money
Yeah.
and another planet,
Yeah.
things are, I don't want to put this in anybody's head so that they have this intention, but there's a very likely probability that the benefits you draw to yourself are not the thing that you set in front of you.
Right.
Because, right, 150
Space
degrees,
thinking.
you can't
Yeah.
see it. It's going to come out of the places that you don't see and you don't expect.
Isn't that
And so
interesting?
I often say the most powerful thing somebody with quincunxes in their chart can do is to stop putting all of those expectations on the outcome
Right.
and remain curious. It's like the thing to keep you the most sane in life, you know?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so, but we're getting trained through trainings and social media and television
That's
and
such a
commercials.
good, oh, like I think about Amanda Owens's work, and I think I sent you the book on receiving, and I know I've sent it to other folks. And the thing that just struck me about it, I can be a really generous person, and I love to kind of give back because I feel like I've been given mind-blowing amounts of stuff. And um, even in that, I felt like until I become good at receiving, right? Like all of what you're talking about, the expectations are sort of limiting what you can receive. And then to counter it, I'm going to introduce a thought. Hopefully, it's helpful. It's how my brain works. My piano teacher, when I'm at the piano, says, all of those keys work together. So if you miss a key, you're not making a mistake. You're welcoming a guest when they show up at your door. And it's a lesson I try to apply everywhere. Although, again, mileage may vary. Ooh, human. But that idea of you're welcoming a guest or you're figuring out how to receive. And I think there are, one of the examples Amanda provides in her book, which is, I would recommend it to anyone, is if you're strategizing, but you look like you're peaceful, you're busy, you're not receiving, you're not resting. And there's nuances to receiving that I'm sure you get in any healthy community, but sometimes that's not always available. And so instruction in that is helpful. And then that, I think, can address expectations, right? Because once you receive, you get like, oh, that doesn't matter at all. And this matters to me and this matters to someone else. And so you can um, evaluate your audience
Yeah.
instead of getting on an expectation.
And also, so another thing that I work on for myself big time and have, this has been a big core of my self work for the past 4 years, is instead of, I want to make this much money. Let's just use that as an example because that's often how you're trained if you're doing
Yeah.
business courses, right? It's like set a financial goal. Is to is set the intention of what you want that money to do, because it doesn't
Right.
necessarily have to come in the form of money, right? It could
Right.
come in a barter, it could come in a gift, it could come so many different ways. So
Yeah.
that's the idea behind the separating yourself from that hard intent, that hard expectation, right?
That's
Is that
beautiful.
what do you want it? What if you're hoping for a partner, what do you feel a partner could bring you? What is the thing that you feel you're missing in having a
Mm,
partner? So
yeah.
wish for that and
Yeah.
then be open to what comes, right?
Yeah. I love that.
I love it when it makes sense to you.
Ah!
All that matters.
That's the beauty of this platform.
As,
It's
as
for
long as there's one person in the world who doesn't think I'm just rambling, I'm happy.
Oh, I'm grateful for that. So let's talk about isolating some stuff. Would you do this with your ascendant or any of the angles, or is it strictly planetary?
Gosh, you could do this. Say you need to put yourself out there,
Mhm.
and we'll use a bit of an easier example. So I have my angles, the ones that are outgoing and obvious, are both ruled by Jupiter, right?
Mhm.
And so, say I need to put myself out there and to be seen. So, you want to make Jupiter happy. You want Jupiter to attract positive attention, right? And so, then that would be planet that I would work.
Right.
But so if there's something really specific, like there's you're goal oriented, you have a project coming up, and so
Yeah.
figuring out which planet is going to be the most beneficial to talk to, that's one way of doing it. If you're having like a recurring problem, let's say, or there's something that is recurring, um, it's almost always going to be a Mars or Saturn problem. So, do you need to be nice to Mars and Saturn so that the difficulty of the lessons that you keep attracting can be toned down?
Right.
There's another way to work with it.
I like that.
Um, and it's also those two planets that are likely to be part of a health issue. So, what can you do to work with that, right?
Mhm.
It can be elemental. Like I'll often, if we're going through right now, we're lacking a bit of water,
Right.
right? And so working with a bowl of water, a fountain, something that's water related,
Yeah.
can help just create elemental balance.
Yeah.
So it's infinite. It's infinite the way that you can work with this, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so the more, I want to say obvious, but that's not the right word. Like the more big, not don't get too complicated and don't get too figurative, because
Got
then
it.
you're muddling up the
Good.
message, right?
Good. Direct information, which I think is
Yeah.
supported best by the planetary approach. So should we start with, do you want to pick a planet or should we start with the sun?
Oh yeah, let's start with the sun. I'm just going to pull up. I made a few little notes
Oh, cool.
just to give us a clear breakdown of what they're looking for. Yeah, so we can start with the sun and then talk maybe for each one, give like a little example of what the charity for
I
that
think
would
that's
be like. That sound
I
like a
think so.
good idea?
Yeah.
So the sun wants us to shine, right? The sign wants us to put ourselves out there, and to also shine and authenticity are always the two words that I default to with the sun, right? Because
Yeah.
we were inundated for so long with the sun sign astrology that was like telling us that this is who we are.
Mhm.
And so a lot of people are like, astrology is bullshit just because that's their only exposure to it, right? But I have found, and tell me if you've had the same experience, more often than not, the sun sign is who we're becoming
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
and what we're trying to
Mature.
embrace all of it, right?
Yeah.
And so, of course, it's harder to do when the sun is in a sign it's not necessarily affiliated with, right? It loves to be in Leo, it loves to be in fire. It's okay
Yeah.
in air, it doesn't necessarily, always hate being in air. But in water and in earth, it struggles. And so those signs might take a bit longer to figure out who they are at their core and their authentic selves,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
And so creativity is also wrapped up in the sun, but it's about creative expression,
Mm.
not necessarily just creativity for us to do sort of on our own to fulfill a Venus need or a Neptune need.
Mhm.
It's more of a creative way to express ourselves and a creative way to sort of show the most fiery Leo side of ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And so people who are trying to connect to their sun, who are have a hard time combining those ideas, like how do I put myself out there, how can I make this part of myself shine, um, can really benefit from doing some kind of solar work. And it can be planetary charity. Like, can you think of any off the top of your head
Oh,
things that
sure.
would be okay? So give me some
Children.
good.
Yeah. Kids. So from creating a pea patch where kids can grow food to making sure they've got safe places to play, to, of course, like volunteering to be on a school board or something like that, where you're, contributing in that way. Then I can think of, the expanded relationships of auntie and uncle, and of course the intense and never ending work of parenting, right? Is quite so that your intention comes really to a full point. I'm trying to think of, I know you mentioned it the last time, the Ronald McDonald House has
Yeah,
this.
yeah. And that to me is really lunar, um, because of the
Oh,
stomach and the food and the feeding and the nourishing.
got it.
But
Yeah.
for sun, I tend to lean a bit more traditionally to men. The sun in traditional astrology is male. It's very right.
Beautiful.
So,
Yeah.
and especially young men, right?
Yeah.
Vitality, right? So really anything that helps people improve their vitality
Yeah.
is going to be solar, right? Because
That's
it's our
cool.
vitality. So
Yeah.
that you can make that fit into so many different things that it's very open.
Yeah.
But anything that helps young men organizations, is
Yeah.
great solar work. Um, Donating to a theater project,
Mm.
that helps kids, helps people get out there and put themselves out there. And it doesn't have to be kids, it can be anybody who's doing
Yeah.
personal work that is learning to be okay in front of people and showing people who they are, right?
Yeah.
Any kind of self discovery work that people are doing that you can help, maybe donate to what's the word that I want? I keep thinking of the word subsidy, but that's not scholarships, right?
Oh, nice.
Scholarships to help people. And the other one that we had last time that was really good was,
Just for success or
yeah, that's a good one.
yeah.
Yeah, but no, the one that helps you speak publicly.
Toastmasters.
Yes, Toastmasters. So donating your time to Toastmasters
Yeah.
or helping somebody take Toastmasters, anything like that. That's super sun related.
Yeah.
And a really great use of, yeah, especially if you want to donate your time and help somebody with that, even on a personal level, if you want to donate your time and energy to help somebody get brave on camera, right? Doing a free workshop to help people perfect their skills being in front of people. That's a
Yeah.
very solar thing for
Yeah.
sure. Running free workshops to teach
Yeah.
creative expression, anything like that,
I
very
love
solar.
that. Would so I'm really interested in public health, and you may or may not know, but we have a person who doesn't believe in germ theory as our
Yep.
health and human services guy. And so mutual aid for COVID protection feels like something that I can contribute to, or donating masks. And because that's related to vitality, which is another thing, authenticity and vitality aid
Hmm.
um, expression. And
Yep.
so that notion of supporting people through public health
Yep.
is something I like. Yeah.
And something like that could be used, I can't think of a better word, for so many different things, right?
Right.
Because Pluto was attached to COVID, right? Neptune, the outers had a lot to do, so you could be doing some remediation with the outers, especially right now with them changing signs. Lots of
That's
people are getting, if you are somebody who has something at 0 and 29 degrees of a sign, your chart is being lit up right now. And
right.
so maybe in a difficult way, depending on the aspect.
Right.
And so doing that kind of work, you could apply it to any planet, right?
Right.
Because it's about people's vitality, it's about their health, it's about their immune system, that's the ascendant. Like there's just so many ways that could be used in a remediation. And that's also where the intention part of it becomes really important, because being
Right.
clear about why you would want to donate to that, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And that's what
Yeah.
I was going to get to. I struggle sometimes with really obvious things. Excuse me. And so in my mind, I would just say to myself, like before I go deliver masks or something, I would say, I'm going to ground myself, I'm going to anchor myself in the prayer of good health and vitality. I'm going to anchor myself in my sun. And then I'm going to head on out, drop off those goodies, and come back and go, yeah, something like that.
Love it. I
Good.
love it. I love it. And I just want to say, like, we remediate our charts all the time
Yeah,
without knowing it.
that's
And
right.
there's if you can start to identify the things that you do unconsciously to remediate your chart, you can make them 100 times more powerful by identifying them, adding an attention to them, and just continue doing them
I love
mindfully,
I love
right?
it.
Like I love hearing when people say, "Oh, well, I do this." I'll ask about Mars. What do you do physically? Or
Yeah,
then I'll look at the sign it's in. What do you do in that way, right? And people always have strategies that they're working with for their charts, right?
yeah,
And so, how good is it if you can know why you're doing it and then actually
absolutely.
make it even more
Yeah,
powerful?
and add a little more oomph, to
Yes, a little juice to it. Yeah,
yeah.
for sure. Should we move on to? We've got 20 minutes, so I say we plow through.
I Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Yeah.
So the moon is, mothers, it's women. The moon wants us to feel, it wants us to connect to our emotions and our intuition, right? It wants us to feel safe. It wants us to feel nourished. It wants to take care. Um, and above all, in our natal charts, it wants us to feel safe, whatever that means, whatever sign it's in, right? And often all of our unconscious behaviors are driven by the moon and whatever it's doing in your chart, right? So if you're somebody whose emotions run the show and you would like that to shift a
Hmm.
little bit, doing some remediation, planetary charity with the moon can be really helpful. And
Beautiful.
so anything to do with mothers, anything to do with babies, anything to do with food, those are all anything to do with nourishing ourselves, water, protecting water, especially small water, because Neptune is giant water, moon is smaller water. Those are all, and you can get minute, you can go, so is your moon in a cardinal sign? Well, then rivers. Is your moon in a fixed sign? Well, lakes. Like you can get really specific with it. You can Virgo the heck out of this stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. But
as
again,
as Lillian and I are likely to do.
I know, I know. I know. I was going to say a little minute ago, full disclosure, my husband and I think Kankyo Kaizen, the Toyota based constant improvement that they use at work, is an appropriate measure for our relationship. So these systems are, I like to counter them with the poetry and the sort of resonance of the astrology, because those are very mental and crisp processes. And these are really sort of the octopus that escapes the cage all the time, and how to work with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. But lunar work, like if you're somebody who just feels like your life is out of control and you don't even know where to start, I say start with the moon.
Nice.
The moon is often sitting at the center of a lot of stuff that we don't, especially things that we don't understand about ourselves, because those things kicked in. before we have a memory, you know?
Mm. Yeah.
And so, yeah, the moon is always powerful medicine, no matter
Oh,
what,
beautiful.
right?
So anything with moms, I would also argue anything that nourishes,
Yeah,
you know, feeding people, sending soldiers care packages. Uh, um, there's something that a lot of folks do that's so beautiful, and I just haven't done it yet. Like for my mom, I need to go out and visit her grave, but I always see such beautiful pictures of folks visiting and buffing up the graveyards of their beloveds. And I think about that as a Saturnian or even a Plutonian sort of
yeah.
um, mission. I don't think it hurts. I'm not saying that, but there's a blessing that comes with that feels associated.
Well, and so even as you said that, like sending food to soldiers, I'm like, oh, if you had a Capricorn moon, that would be perfect, right?
Nice.
Because Capricorn associate or an Aquarius moon associated with Saturn, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
And also like the food bank, it is the most straightforward, but
Yes.
the do's and don'ts, don't donate the crap you don't want.
Uh,
That's that's not remediation. That's not
yeah.
planetary charity.
Yeah.
Not in the way that you're hoping it's going to be anyways, right?
The same, you want the same quality as you are hoping for the outcome. You're not going to
Yeah.
cheat
And
yourself. You're not going to let that happen with anyone else.
yeah, and so, I love what you just said, just made me think like, as you're doing this work, what would you need? What would
Yeah.
you want? Right? And if you were, I mean, it definitely calls for some empathy, right?
Yeah.
It's like, so if you're not in a position where you need anything, well, now
Yes.
you need to start, looking at, well, what if I did, and what would be most helpful to me, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. The moon to me, I mean, I have moon in my first house, so I easily go to those moon
Yes.
remediation, right?
Yeah.
Easy, probably easier than any of the other ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, but that I always think that the moon would be my first place to start if you've never done this and you don't know what to do, or the sun, right? And sort of see how things progress from there, what shifts, and again, stay curious and open and just sort of follow the thread that you pulled, because it's going to tell this story, right? Or has the potential to anyways. Yeah.
I'm gonna suggest that we either call a halt to the topic and start talking about where folks can find their charts and find the planets that are involved with
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
chart.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
um
yeah.
I was just going to say, and I have chart stuff on my website. So I can
Perfect.
actually put that page in the comments where people
I
can go
would
and look
love
at
that.
their free chart.
Yes.
And also, there's astro.com is good.
Right.
I've stopped actually getting excited about sending people to astro.com because I had a session with Andrea Gers, and that's where she gets her charts. And my chart was wrong, and
Oof.
the data was right and everything. But every once in a while, it gives me an Aries rising.
Isn't
I have
that something?
Pisces rising. Yeah. And so, make sure you check it in a couple of different,
Yeah.
if you're
So
doing it for free.
consulthesky.com has
Yeah,
free charts.
you bet.
alab.com, which is the solar fire site, also has free charts that you can mail to yourself. And then astro.com and quite a few others if you
Yeah,
search in your search engine of choice.
exactly. That's a
But
great
that
point.
would be in the sense of you're brand new to astrology, this would be a great way to explore the base chart. And so you go grab your chart, print it out, or make notes about what's where, and then you can start looking at it. But as we've been discussing, it's not just your sun, that we're talking about. You can take what we've just said about the sun and run with it. But the sun, you know, ruled by Aries, right? Ruled by, what am I crazy? I'm crazy. Sorry. The sun's ruled by whatever planet sign it's in. But we have been obliquely referring to the sun being happy or sad. And so maybe we can talk a little bit about what would make a planet happy or sad.
Well, and the tricky thing about that whole conversation is that there is no happy or sad. There is
Right,
no good or bad. It's neutral. But
right.
we're programmed to think everything is black or white, good or
Yes.
bad, male or female, right? There's this binary mentality that we have. And that's
Absolutely.
just not what it works. And that a lot of that is attached to expectations, right?
Right.
And so if you're somebody who operates out of some pretty strict expectations, then
Right.
that good or bad is just, you're going to get nailed into something that's really just not all that true. I mean, good or bad is going to be
Or
based
hope
on your own
to be
expectations,
honest. Yeah.
right?
It's not like I know that in our culture it feels like good is you get to have a fun thing and nothing bad ever happens. And bad is anything that's uncomfortable, distracting, or further than that. So there's a sort of a over reliance on a good feeling when, like we've been talking about, a good outcome could involve some distress, some tension, some setbacks, and still have all the qualities that you're looking for, that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so, this is the thing that's so fascinating to me, because as you're talking, I'm like, we're programmed to think that good is easy or pleasurable,
Great examples. Yeah, those are
right?
great. Yeah.
And I mean, that is like, it's a pretty blatant message that we keep. If like, we need to be happy, we need to be laughing, we need to be
Easy.
joyful, we need to be lazy. Like the easiest life can be where we smile all the time, you know, is what we keep being sold that we're supposed to be doing,
Yes,
right?
I
But
would
then
agree.
you know, when you see a natal chart, and it is a complex thing with like stuff layered on top of stuff on top of stuff, and then we have people's experiences and choices that change how that plays out. And
Yes.
you know, it's wild.
And
It's
their
what it's
responses to the world, the whole physical reality of who shows up for you, who's there, and what they're
100%.
capable of physically.
Yep, 100%. And so there are people who don't crave ease. There are people whose joy is in working hard and producing something,
Yes.
right? So what one person thinks is good and another person thinks is good are not the same thing. So, you know, having this conversation where everything
I
is
love,
one or the other,
I love that.
it just doesn't apply, right?
So,
It's like
so say I feel like my vitality, my authenticity rather, is struggling. My sense of self. I've started to say, and I've really enjoyed it. It's from a group that I've been in. I call myself back to myself, and that's my tiny little mantra for like it's okay, I can be me. And you know like you're saying, every life is complex, and every life has the capacity to have gorgeous things happen and the capacity to have terrible things happen, and there's no control, and then we all die. It's a frightening proposition just on the face of it. And so we're trying to say, while you're here and invested, here are the things that do create not the ease that lets you escape, but the ease that lets you reach your next step. And, maybe the insight or the encouragement that lets you keep going for this goal of being yourself.
yeah, I love that. I don't remember what your first point was though. We got into, oh, good or bad. Right, right, right. So
Yeah.
I definitely want to address that. So
Good.
um, there's the planet does
Happy,
it, what's that?
I said happy or unhappy. Like how
Right,
do we,
right, right. Yeah, yeah,
without
yeah.
good or bad? I'm just holding both of those.
Yes. So the planets can express their core job, their core thing easier in the signs that they rule, right?
Mhm.
Or in the sign that they're exalted, or in an a sign that's in an element that's not countered to their energy. And sometimes I find it easier to talk about when we think about yin or yang, and
Mhm.
not from a masculine feminine, but from an outward expressing or an inward attracting, because
Yes.
that's much more descriptive of how they work,
Yeah.
right? And so, you know, the sun is going to have an easier time in fire and air because they're outward expressing, they're not, they're yang, right? So just if you get it down to it's just its energetic level, right? So whereas the sun in the inward attracting signs, it takes some time for it to figure out how to do its sun thing, right? It still has gifts. It's still wonderful. If your sun is not in air or fire, you're not broken. It's not true at all, you know? And so with the moon is the opposite. It attracts, it's bringing everything in. It's more comfortable in earth and water because you know what I mean? So it's more thinking about it in those terms. And so sometimes or often maybe when a planet's not in a sign that
Yeah.
is associated with its natural flow, how's
Yeah.
that?
I like that.
Um, then it is going to take some time to figure out how it's going to produce what it needs to produce, you know?
Right.
So the moon, I mean, it can struggle in earth and water, don't get me wrong. The moon in Virgo and the moon in Capricorn are going to have to learn how to function on an
Absolutely.
emotional level, you know.
Absolutely.
It's just that's just true, but they can likely get there faster
Right.
than say maybe the moon in Libra because
Right.
it's trying to put itself out there, right?
So
And connect.
interesting. So interesting. And so some of the metaphors I've heard similar to that are, you can't escape the royal association, but let's just shift it to something else. You are a parent and you have kids. You are happiest in your own home. So you'd be happiest in your own sign if you were the sun, and you'd be happiest in the first house. And so those are the conditions we think of as happy. And then anything else, maybe you're in your son's home or your daughter's home, and that still makes you happy. Like you've got kids who are like happy to see you and they're trying to make you stuff, and they've got grandkids and it's the whole package. And so that's the condition that would be positive, extending beyond, but it's not as good as when you're home,
Right.
and so
Yeah.
on and so forth. We're trying to describe these things. And so there's less comfort and less comfort the further away, quote unquote. It's not really a comfort thing, it's a sense of that ease. And then I think conditionally, we should also mention, as Andrea did, we're coming out with her remediations episode as soon as possible. I'm hoping to get it done over Norwalk weekend, but we'll see. But the remediations are also done for planets that are too strong. And so that condition we just mentioned for the sun, if it's the Mars and it's got adjacent some really powerful friends, and it's in a house it likes or where it can wreak havoc, and it's in a condition that's powerful, maybe it's in its home sign or an exaltation, boy, you might have a little too much for the folks who are around you. And your mitigation or your charity may be to let that excess go to somebody who can use it, Habitat for Humanity or other things that tax you because you've got a very strong situation. So wanted to point that out too, even though it deviates a little. I think we're untangling the good and bad, the happy and unhappy.
I think so. I think so. And
Yeah.
I know I saw some posts online from a young astrologer who is a Hellenistic astrologer, and she was
Yes.
saying that she must have been reacting to something. She was really angry, and she was talking about how planets in detriment or in fall, so in the opposite planets from where rulership and exaltation are. She's like they're not weak, right? Because
Right.
we again another binary idea is strong and
Yeah.
weak that we tend to ascribe to planets. And she's like, and I've seen this over and over again. They are just as strong in the opposite sign.
Yeah.
And we can see sometimes where they can be problematic.
Right.
But she says her point of view is they have very special gifts on that
Yeah.
end too. But
Yes.
again, we're programmed to have certain expectations. And
Yeah.
so if it's not producing the thing we expect it to produce, then it's bad. Instead of sort of looking at, so what was the positive that came out of it, right? Or what
So
are the gifts it actually gives me, right?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, I mean, yeah, the faster we can move away from thinking good, bad, positive, negative, the easier life gets, really, because we're,
You know, And that sort of, to me, is the more we realize just how we're not capturing any of the data of the world, even with all of our sophisticated ideas, we can let go of that paradigm entirely. I
Well,
like
and
that.
I often wonder, like lately, this is a total brain fart, but I just need to say it, that we've spent a lot of time, like whether it's science trying to figure out how stuff works, or whether it's psychic woo woo trying to tap into the magical side of life, whatever. Everybody's trying to figure out how it works,
Yes.
you know and I kind of think that, I wonder if we're in such a weird time and space because we've spent so much time trying to figure it out instead of just living it and enjoying
Ooh,
it and accepting
interesting.
it.
Interesting.
That maybe life would stop being so weird and unpredictable and strange. That's
We
just
may have
my brain.
opportunity with the predominance of air and fire, right? Let's check in a couple of years and see how we did.
What's going?
So you made a leave behind for folks who are watching this, right?
I did. I have to repost it because this is our second attempt with sound issues, and we didn't record. Oh,
We're getting used
good
to the
Lord.
process.
Yes.
Yeah, we're
Anyways,
gonna
so
keep
yes, I
going.
will make sure that I repost that into the comment section of this
Yeah,
once it's
and just to
posted.
say, we're so excited to be joining you guys every week, and we look forward to hearing, what it is you'd be interested in hearing about, what topics spark something for you. We're here to
Absolutely.
offer offer information.
Yay.
Yeah,
Wow, I cannot even believe how fast an hour goes in
that's
our
great.
in our time together. Bizarre.
Yeah,
Anyways, thank you so much for this.
yeah,
And we'll be posting the recording so that anybody who wants to revisit it can, and it'll
yes,
have sound.
yep, exactly. Thank you
And we'll
all.
be back next week. What are we going to talk about? We should just decide right now. What are we going to talk about?
Absolutely to decide. Shall we join the many talking about Saturn and Aries and what we
Love
can
it.
expect? Let's do that.
Yep. And make a note. Excellent. So we're going to talk about the change from Saturn and Pisces to Saturn and Aries.
Yeah,
That any time a planet goes from Pisces into Aries is a massive shift, right? And
absolutely.
because
Yeah,
Saturn's a bit farther out and it affects all of us,
yeah.
at the same time, we're going to talk about what that looks like. And maybe we'll bring in a little bit of the Neptune because they're doing it together.
Such a
And
good
what does
idea.
that mean, right? Because that is pretty screwed up.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, it's
yeah,
wild.
in
And
just
it just
in trying to
happened.
blend the ideas in your head,
It
not
just
in what
happened
it'll.
over here. And now it's going to happen over here. Yeah, that's beefy. I like it.
Excellent. All right. So we're going to say goodbye for now, everybody, and we'll
Thanks
see
for
you
joining
next
us.
week. Yeah. Thanks for watching. Bye.